Call the meeting of the Westminster School Board to order. We're at the Westminster Center School. It's 6 o'clock on February 1st. So again, for the good of the public, thank you to FAT TV for reporting. We'll just do a quick go around the room and do introduction.
Hi, Jim Vizina, Finance.
Liz Hardy, Principal, Westminster Center School.
Cheryl Charles, Chair of the Board.
Team Wheels, Westminster Board.
Charlie Hutchinson, Vice Chair of the Westminster Board.
Margie Ferry, Westminster Board.
In-house superintendent.
Great, thank you, everybody. So I think
And
there's some.
Entry to the Westminster West.
Thank you, Karen. Out of sight, not out of mind. Thank you. Thanks so much. And Karen would have been here with us in person, but is being prudent given a recent exposure, potential exposure. So thank you, Karen.
Yes.
You're welcome.
In terms of adjustments to the agenda, a couple.
7A, if we could postpone that to a future meeting. After we published the agenda, I spoke with Ms. Sullivan. The sixth grade class got a little behind because we had a couple of those delayed openings and then the snow day that threw their schedule off. And so they apologize, but they're looking forward to it. They just need a little bit more time.
Outstanding, thank you. In terms of the reviewing and approving of the minutes, we actually have already approved December 7 and 12, but we do have January 4 to review and approve tonight. So that's just a correction to that item. The next reports stay the same. 7, Andy is just amended. Under 8, old and unfinished business for discussion and action. I'd like us to add planning for the town meeting. We started that planning. I think there are a few things that we should think of about that. So a discussion item there. And we'll have some discussion about the date and time of the next meeting, but it's already on here, but we'll be discussion. So I think that's all adjustments to the agenda, unless anything else. Communication and public comment. Is there any? Right, seeing none, then let's go to reviewing and approving the minutes. Again, we actually did approve December 7 and 12, but we do have January 4, and those were only sent to you this afternoon, so I don't know if you've had a chance to take them again.
I saw my name is spelled wrong at the bottom. But
Is it? Okay.
where was it? No, it's under new business for discussion on the, but who cares? Not a big deal.
Do you spell it M-A-R-G-I-E or
Yes.
Y? Okay. So correct the spelling to M-A-R-G-I-E.
That's the only thing my eye like picks up.
Yeah. So good thing. All right, is there a motion, please, to approve the January 4 minutes as corrected?
So
Who was first?
me, Charlie's back, so I have to go faster.
All right, so she has moved to approve the January 4 minutes. Any additional discussion? All right, Karen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Approved.
And all of those in the room, you can vote.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So unanimously approved the minutes. And let's go right into finance, Jim. Is it the same one that we sent out this afternoon? So same one that was attached? Yeah.
So I do want to say today is payroll day.
Okay.
Now, for those who don't know, Mascot had a big conversion yesterday. And I would not really opt for having payroll on a major bank conversion software.
Yeah.
Things went smooth, but it was a little bit more process than we had expected. Just want to say, tough end of January because we have a lot of reports for state and federal taxes. We've got the W-2s that have to get out, and it's just a tough time making everything fit. So I just want to go through, if I can, on I'm on page 1 here, and on page 1, I just want to explain what is listed as not calculating correctly. She has not she has not had enough time to go back and adjust this. She thought she had fixed it, and something went in the wrong direction. So OPEB is that 1509 that the Vermont retirement system bills for a new person, and this may be 3 years ago, a new person coming into the system. If they're still here, we're paying that 1509 each year. So it's not big money, but it's money that we've got to keep track of, and it should be in the order of I guess 16,000 was budgeted. That's what I would expect. I mean, it would well conform with that. So we will get to it, but it's a hiccup still that hasn't been fixed for each district. And just on page 1, you'll see, tuition a little bit over on the middle school. For grammar, we were a little bit over, and again, it's hard to predict exactly the numbers of students. I think Liz does an awesome job in tracking and having something that gives us that prep of where we're going to be or should be. But you'll always have some variance.
Well, to just insert a comment, as you know, we have a reserve fund to help us with that.
Exactly. And I mean, I just want to comment. I mean, this is doing the right thing. Having that reserve fund just in case. I mean, we hope we never have to use it, but at least if there's an overage, we won't be in the deficit.
Right.
And that's managing your finances. So I appreciate that.
I have a question on that. Well, I guess I don't understand, why is it hard to predict? We know how many kids we have.
Move in, move out.
Who's moving in?
Yeah.
And it's special ed is similar to this. When Andy visits with Stacy on why are you over? Oh, I had 4 kids that require some heavy duty issues.
Okay.
So
These numbers, Margie, would be around 4 students between these two. I'm just ballparking, so I'm not saying that
Yeah,
it's 4 students. And so it could be a student, just as
Well,
Liz said, might have moved into district or.
last year we had 6 unaccounted for 7th graders
Right.
that had been homeschooled
Right.
since kindergarten, or maybe were at the grammar school since kindergarten.
Yes.
And then they show up in 7th grade. We had no idea. Right, so that
Right.
would totally below what
Okay.
your predictions.
Or somehow you got a kiddo who's attending the grammar school that never connected with school. They've been there their entire career and
Right,
no fault of anyone. And then all of a sudden, seventh grade, you get a bill.
bam, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. I wasn't talking to. No.
I mentioned too, Nicole had asked about homeschool, whether those count into that state, calculation. And homeschoolers don't. We got confirmation that they do not enter into. But, I have had some schools where they may take a course. I mean, they get into some of the higher level areas. And I don't know, but I think there's some movement with that. And
Cause I was moving that, so I wasn't 100% paying attention.
So,
Homeschoolers.
I think if they're a partial student, a homeschooler says, hey, I want to take physics at the high school. I think you can get some percentage of credit for the student. But anyway, it's not a big deal, but I just say the homeschoolers don't count for entering into the system to get money for us.
I think Charlie had.
Technical thing, I'm not following the negatives. So why is that a negative percentage? What's it a negative percentage of?
So you have a budget,
Yeah,
you have expended, and the expended is YTD,
mhm,
expended year to date.
mhm.
Now, it will subtract from, in other words, you're taking the 840 budget minus what you've expended, which is 882,
Mhm.
and that leaves you short 42,000.
So in that case, I understand, because we overspent, but in the case of the grammar school, that's also a negative. Why is
But
that a
it's
negative?
less, yeah.
We thought we maybe
You
had
have
more.
encumbered funds,
Yes, that's,
I mean, you've
That has-
spent money that,
but you've also encumbered funds in that line, so that's why it's running negative.
but does that mean that we've overspent or that we are under less than we expected?
I think that means that we'd have to go back and look at why those funds are encumbered.
But if we.
And,
if
and,
there's
and
a
they-
reason-
and it is potential that that may come out of encumbrance, which would either keep the negative or offset that negative and put it into a positive.
right,
But a negative means we've overspent.
yes,
Over.
But the year to date is not over for the grammar.
That's
Correct.
different, that's different than the middle school.
and some of the schools like Compass, they build twice a year.
Uh-huh.
So, we're projecting and again, planning for the student to be there that second semester.
So if indeed, in the case of the grammar school, you have to spend that 54,798,
That's
then we will have been overspent by 23%.
by 30,
31,
well, 23%, you're
yeah,
right.
By 23%.
yeah,
That is correct.
I
correct.
see. One. Okay. Sorry.
Just, and right now, Charlie, it gives you an indicator. We've still got, 5 months to go.
Yeah.
And that we're just monitoring, if you will,
Okay.
where we think we're gonna end up. Page 2, top of the page, and we're looking at general education. Where the heck are we? And it looks like, I would say you're 275,000 to the good in all of general fund, and that's your biggest area is general fund education. And it looks like you're on a solid ground.
And is that change just because the machine miscalculated or because something's different?
See that in the software somewhere, it should have only brought in that OPEB, which is other pension and employment benefits.
Mhm.
That should have been brought in once in the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And see, we won't get hit because it's a one-time charge. And so any new students, and we've got a list of all of the new people who have come into the district, even if they came in 3 years ago, they're still on that list. So we have a pretty accurate tally for what needs to come out. something happened, whether they were taking it monthly or weekly, or I'm not sure, but there's something that's not calculating correctly.
Yeah.
So the other thing, as we know, so guidance, we've hired a new person, new insurance. I mean, it is what it is. You know that that's what you're gonna end up being, 20,000 over what we had budgeted for that reason.
And then to pull you back to page one, if you look, I think it's the second line down for your teacher salaries, you're well over on that line because again, your current guidance counselor was a teacher and so she's moved, right? So there's an offset there.
Yep.
But because we're not moving monies on lines, right? So
Well, over, not in overspent, but meaning over monies remaining. Yeah.
to the good, as Jim would say. Yes, thank you for that. Just so, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
All right, so looking at page 3, health services. I mean, it looks like you've got right now 26,000 to the good. Psychological services, and this is where right now psychological services are collecting in the SU. So at the end of the year, and it's in the SU because of retirement, Beamers, to be able to get Beamers, we couldn't do pieces. Where if they were 80% in the school and 20% at the,
School-based clinicians.
yes.
That's who those are.
Yeah. So they will be billed back. On page 4, technology, we're a little bit over. We've got one equipment line that we didn't budget, but we have 11,000. So,
Have a lot of what, sorry?
excuse me,
You say have a lot of something.
it's equipment that was purchased, middle of the page, Charlie, on page 4.
Yeah, I see the line,
I guess it's listed as supplies. 12,000, so. I do say though, technology is one of those areas that's extremely important to keep up with. I mean, it's changing at light speed. I think Ricky does a phenomenal job of making sure that everything is budgeted and in the right slots.
So
But-
what was that then? What was that $12,000?
And it would get new boards this year.
Not sure, maybe it was new,
It probably was
a
like.
board that had to be
boards.
replaced, or, I'm not sure exactly what that is.
And on page 5,
Page 4, right in the
Page
middle
4.
of the page, supplies, technology, Westminster.
Yep.
It's like $11,680.
we can look into that, get back in.
And I don't, again, I don't know if Ricky bought something that was needed.
It wasn't budgeted.
No, but still, I think if the need's there and it's required, he still would go forward with it.
Yeah, did any classrooms get new?
Yeah, I'll check on that. One thing I'm thinking of, but I can't imagine that was $11,000 was when we all got new computers, we needed a new toggle to plug in.
Right.
Yeah, that
Those would be $11,000.
And the computers?
Did they go over on the computers? But
No,
everyone
but
got it.
that's all coming out of the SU, it shouldn't be coming out of the individual.
Right.
But don't that do for
So-
boards or?
Again, I'd have to, I want to talk Ricky, get back instead of speculating. I don't-
Yes, I agree. Yep. Page 5, nothing out of the
I
ordinary.
have one more question about that, sorry.
Yeah.
If Ricky is going to buy something that's not budgeted for, with whom would he need to speak?
I mean,
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can only approve overages.
Okay,
So I don't know what that is, so I just,
yeah.
And so we don't have to.
It could possibly, I mean, I'm
It's an
speculating.
SU line item. It's.
Yeah, it could possibly have just gotten miscoded. And it
Right.
should come out of the SU
Right.
and it got coded to Westminster, so.
Right.
That would be.
Get that off of there.
Yeah, because technology is SU related.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
that's right.
I mean, there might be something that was specific to the school, but Liz, I'm hearing that Liz isn't aware of it, so I don't know, so.
It's a good, those would be the most expensive.
I know, like, I can't imagine that $11,000.
We'll look and we'll.
Okay.
So, page 5 deals with a superintendent and principal. And page 6, fiscal services. Again, these assessments are gonna be exactly right on the money because that's what we're invoicing for.
Like, what about on that page 5? VSTRS, that's right kind of in the middle of the page, we budgeted none, we've used
That's
45.
an OPED again.
Retirement, that's the retirement, but why do we?
That's not retirement.
What is it?
That's the same thing that was on that first page. It's not calculating correctly.
Okay, so it's redundant, that's another line.
I think any
Same thing.
place where there's OPEB,
Okay,
there are issues.
okay. Thanks.
So,
But you may see OPED like in admin, and OPED in guidance, and OPED in
Yeah.
different places, because it's gonna hit those departments if you've got someone that you gotta pay in those department areas. So
Yep.
it's not all in, that first one that's way over, that's teachers.
right,
Okay.
So then it's gonna get brought, so I don't want you to think that you're double dipping in
Right,
it,
it's not double dipping, it's just being,
but there seems to be an
Account-
overage in each,
Yeah.
being over counted in each line.
okay.
That is, it's not retirement or it is retirement?
it's
Part of it.
it's something that the retirement system is billing us for.
Yeah.
But it's not the Vistra's piece. You know, you pay, I don't know what it is, 10%, and it goes up towards auxiliary. This is something that they say, hey, any new person coming into the Vistra system, you're tagged with this 1509 currently. And that lasts forever.
Right, it's partially because they messed it up, right?
I
They had to start charging more.
they're
because they
$2
messed
billion in debt.
Right.
So if 1509 makes it for them, hey,
Probably won't.
Sorry to ask the same question twice, but if we pretend for a moment that this line about OPEB is a real thing, starts off at 0, and then there's all these other numbers, and then it ends up with 0%. What does the 0% mean in that case?
Again, Charlie, if you look, there's 0 budgeted, the range, year to date, and you have a balance, which is a negative, then you have an encumbrance, which is a negative. You really can't have a negative encumbrance, I don't think, so that's why you got this over
Zero.
challenge of 24,000, which is 0
yes.
over under.
It's just if you add the negatives, Charlie, with what was expensive, it's 0.
Wait a minute, so the balance is negative 4,000 in the line, then you've got an encumbrance of 28,000. So that is the same as a balance of 24,000.
And Charlie, it probably follows the same calculation that's on page 1. Even though it's a bigger number, it still is not correctly calculating the
The
profit.
reason it's 0 is because the 4527
Right,
and 24,144 equal 28,671.
right.
So all those numbers equal 0%.
Yep.
Boy.
Yeah.
You have to interpret pretty much every one of those percentages differently, it seems. Or specifically.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm on page 7 and your operation of buildings. It looks like you've got 54,000 to the good, which is nice to have this time of year.
Do you understand?
That's on page 7 and it's the first section down, operation of building.
Oh, yeah.
This is function 2610.
Half a million.
And it, again, you know, when we look at the wood chip boiler, the cost, we've got encumbered 10,000. And year to date, we've expended 10,000. And we had a budget of 21, so there's some cushion in there.
But they haven't been charged for oil? They haven't paid any oil? I know it's
This-
been encumbered, but nothing's been, they've only paid a little bit out, is that what I'm saying?
Yes,
So right now, West is trending way under what we anticipated.
it's been a very warm winter.
Yeah.
And the heating fuel cost per gallon was, I think, $2.50. So, you know, next year, with chances are we'll be paying more. But the wood chips, between the wood chips, I mean, because it's been so warm, it must be hard to burn the wood chips, you know, because you gotta really have that going full force. But it looks like you're in a comfortable situation. Bond, we've got one more payment in May for the bond interest. Will be finished off, and we're getting closer to the end. So, 1 year, yep. That'll be awesome, awesome to have. And again, I will say, Liz has done an extremely good job in looking at projects, capital projects and other projects, and kind of gleaning and looking ahead. Wish that other principals could do the same, because that's what it's about. It's looking at what monies you look for potential surpluses and saying, what do I need to get done?
Right.
And, you know, whether it be $80,000 of control on the Messerschmitt boiler, I mean, that's something that you wanna kind of manage. This is like usually a lot of money, it's expensive, and that's when you do it. I've seen school districts, nothing, and they know they've got that big pot of money, and they don't take the initiative. And I think that's a shame, and I compliment Liz for at least looking at that scope. It's such a critical piece. So it looks like, you know, you're ending up right now, again, it's early, but you have 400,000 for the good. And that's on page 7. And
479, you mean?
479, but you know, I round off, Charlie, to 400. No,
Somebody would do that with my paycheck. By the way, though.
Yeah, the other way.
the last sheet is the revenue page. And I think, I just want to point out to you, to make sure that it's understood. There's 2 pieces on the tax where it says ed spending grant. And you have a budget of $2,166,000. That ed spending grant is the state money that they give. This is coming out of the state educational grant money. And they're saying, hey, this is to make you whole for the budget that you're going to expend. And then the other piece is coming out of the property taxes directly. And that's where the treasurer, the municipal treasurer, sends us that money. So it's the pot of money that runs the school. Any questions?
I've got some, but let me see if others do. Go ahead, Shadow.
Well, I'd just be reading along about Act 172 or 27, or whatever it is.
27.
And the uncertainties about what its impact will be. Does this incorporate any of the uncertainties or any of the guesswork about what the eventual head fund contribution will be, or whatever it is that it does?
Charlie, could we hold that question for a moment? Because it's a large question. What I'd like to do is finish the discussion of where we are budget to actual.
Mhm.
And then I'd like to get into these broader finance related questions, in part in preparation for the town meeting.
Yeah.
So very appropriate question. Just hold it for a minute. Are there any other questions specific to this budget to actual right now? Then I've got a couple. Okay. So on the first page, we have 25,000 sitting there for substitutes. It's my understanding that we're going to be invoiced
Yes,
by the supervisory union, so we can anticipate that money will
right.
reduce.
That's right.
Okay, do we have any, how many?
We don't.
I don't think we.
No, we don't.
Usually we carry this and it ends up being, money that we carry. That we have as part of our surplus, because we don't have.
We
something
did
like-
last year, it was very light as well.
Carol, would you note the line item that you're talking about on page 1, please?
Yes, it is listed as, well, it's hard to read. these,
Fourth
Jim.
line down.
Or line 4.
Thank you.
Line 4, so for the substitutes, I get it. Okay, thanks.
Right. And I'm sorry, Karen, do you have any other questions yourself?
No, I don't, because people have been asking really good questions, so I'm good.
All right,
But
we'll
I-
just jump in if you need to.
Okay,
So, and then I'm gonna ask a question about the bottom line. I don't think we're anticipating seeing surpluses of this size. We've been trying to manage the budget in a way that we wouldn't have this kind of large, close to $500,000 in surplus. We've created reserve monies to help us in areas, both the tuitions that we know are variable and capital improvements in particular. So I've been trying to figure out where this one's coming from. Yeah. So we'll have to keep watching it.
Yes.
But we also need to be able to explain this to the voters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we get closer, into the April, May timeframe, I think the board, along with the superintendent, will want to look and say, gee, what are there items that we need to get accomplished?
We-
As part of the maintenance area.
Right, he's saying that if we have a surplus that could be large like this, are there things that we should spend money on now? That we can anticipate that we need?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we go to the town meeting, it looks different than this, that's all. Yeah.
Well, yeah, town meeting March 2nd.
I'm talking about the 400,007, what I mean, 47.
So
I'll say
those
that.
are just things. All right, now let's talk a little bit about all the uncertainties in the state of Vermont. And, we have prepared a budget. It is about 4.2% higher than this year's budget, the one that we're taking to town meeting. We have the articles warned. They're in today's Westminster Gazette.
Mhm.
With the front page story, delightfully being the one by Charlie and Liz about wonderful things happening at the school, all of which is great. But all these uncertainties, and Act 127 is one of the big ones. So you've learned some things about it, and I'd love to hear your comments.
I don't think I can reliably relate anything I've learned about 127.
All right, well, let's see, Jim, what are you thinking now with all of that?
Amy probably will be a better person to take the lead. I just want to side comment, if you will, and that is there's such chaos right now in the state of Vermont's school property tax that I think the only thing that we should be, I gave the same advice to my son in Hartford. He didn't take it, but I said, the only thing that we should be relying on is giving the percentage on the expenditure side that we're up and the dollar amount that we're up. That's unknown. That's an absolute. That's where we should focus. Everything else is an absolute guess. And that's not we don't want to go down that path. I don't believe that's ever a good path to go down if we're guessing and saying, hey, we don't know. I just don't think we should go there, but we do know the expenditure side. We know we're up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Any other?
So I actually just came from Burlington today, where we had a Vermont Superintendent Association meeting, and Representative Conlon and Emily, boy, I'm gonna butcher her last name, Kornheiser, spoke and talked with us. I wish I could come back and say I know more and I have more clarity. I think I'm actually more confused coming back from that meeting. They are looking to find some remedy now. I think collectively, superintendents, we are very concerned because they pushed 127 through last year. And they're now trying to push through a fix. And when you're pushing through on a huge piece of funding, I don't think it. But there was some discussion around, they may be looking at removing the 5% hold harmless cap, if you will. Which means that if a district went over the 5%, that they would then be responsible, the taxpayers would be responsible for that 5%, anything over that 5%. But then they're also in the same, looking at some type of this is what, a cent decrease over the 5 years for any district that was substantially harmed because of the new pupil weighting system. So if they went over the 5%, that cap is gone, so they would have to pay whatever. If they were at 7%, they would pick up that extra 2%. But then if that district was substantially harmed by the weighting system, the new weighting system that went through, then the taxpayers from that district would see some type of percentage decrease over the next 5 years. And what was used just for, just to kind of demonstrate it was they would see 10 cents on the first year, 8 cents on the second year, 6 cents on the next year. And then if there were other districts that weren't as harmed, they would see 8 cents and then 6 cents. And so something of that nature. So they're trying to come up with something of that nature. As you pointed out, you did not go over the 5%. They did not even discuss or touch the over 10% piece of this whole thing. So they're only talking about the 5% part of it. So that's why we still don't seem to have a lot of clarity around it. But for the most part, all of our districts, we weren't really harmed by the new weighting system. We were kind of advantaged a little bit. I mean, I don't know, like every district was a little different, I think for RSU, but so I don't see either of those two kind of playing in. The downside of it is that the only way to offset any of that, what they're looking at, is spreading that out across all districts.
Right.
In the ed fund, which means, we will pick up some other district that spent over the 10%. That's the best way I can put it. No one walked away with a good feeling so.
Charlie, go ahead.
One thing I gleaned from conversations I've had earlier, and these two, and pick up on what Jim said, is that this is really all about revenue and not at all about expenses. We have a budget to pay for the things we do in this school, and it is what it is. Voters might disapprove of us having this number of teachers or whatever. That's all about expenditures.
Right.
And so our budget is what it is.
Yes.
The whole Michigas about 137, which I don't fully understand either, is about what the state pays us back to offset all that. And that's for the select board, but that's for the voters to deal with.
Right.
When we set taxes. So we're doing our job as we should. We set a budget we can think is a reasonable, honest, fair budget for the work we do. take it or leave it. I mean, I'm not sure what the voters' choices are, but to say, okay, folks,
But if your budget is voted down,
yeah,
we then have to go back and try and rectify that and come up with another budget.
Mhm.
And then I believe we have until July first, and if you can't get a budget passed, then you're in a default of last year's budget, which will impact, because you had a 4.2% increase,
Correct.
you're gonna have to come back down, and we're gonna have to cut 4.2% out of this budget. So I want to be clear, I'm not, that wasn't loaded in any way, it's just, I wanna, like, you are right, you are passing a budget that you feel is responsible and to operate the school in the way. But if your taxpayers don't accept that, then we're gonna have to come back, we're gonna have to work on a new budget. If we still can't get a budget passed by July first, we then fall into default.
all that would apply whether a 127 existed or not.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So, go ahead, Marcia.
So, Jim, you think, going back to page wasn't 7, going back to page 6, you think we're gonna be over by 479,000?
It's gonna be a
To the
surplus.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the good.
Yes.
And that's what you think we're going to be at the end of the year? Or that's what we are currently?
That's where you are currently, and that's where I use 400, you know, around 400 probably is a good thing for Liz to take a look at and say, how do I shape this?
Because you
Well,
got
because-
substitutes have to still come out of
Right.
here, you still
So-
got.
Well, we know that,
No, but that's not factored in the 479.
I know, but can we estimate what our like, what, we know that we're gonna have to pay the substitutes, there are like a few things we know we're gonna have to pay, can we get any closer to what we exactly think our overage is?
Yes.
Like before town meeting, I guess is what I'm saying.
Everything should be showing up in encumbrances. That's what helps you understand what we're still liable for.
Right.
So that's why this is relatively accurate.
Fairly accurate, because
Okay.
that is one piece that I see as like a little bit of a liability. When I go to town meeting, and I say, this is our budget. We're still above by quite a bit. I mean, this is what you just said, Cheryl. And if we're putting forth a budget that we think is like reasonable and whatever, but then we're still $500,000 over, clearly something is. I know, I'd rather be over than not, but if we have these like, if we have these buffers, if we have these cushions where we can dip into if we accidentally go over, maybe we don't need such a large buffer.
And I will say though, as perfect examples, your guidance position.
Right.
Now, you're over. What if you had tightened that up and said, wait a minute, we're gonna bring that rate down? You know, we get as close as we can.
Right.
I've been around a long, long time, and districts who go too close to the edge, and it gets uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, because when you start to waver to a deficit and cash flow becomes a real issue. That's where you might say, hey, where are we gonna get that cash for payroll? And I've seen situations like that. And now, even though the 400 may sound like, oh, that's really flush for us. Well, look at what a percentage of your budget is.
Yeah. We
And-
had rooms at 5 million was our budget at
Yeah.
that time, so.
And really, it's not bad.
And I think also, like on page 1, you have contracted service or contracted service behavior interventionist. And you see that Liz originally budgeted $111,000. And she's really only spending about half of that. And that might be the need for the student at the beginning of the year, or at this time last year, and where they are now, they didn't need it. So again, we can rather be $50,000 negative because we didn't, like that changes with a student. Like, I think there's little changes in there that add up to a lot of money.
So what do you think is a percentage that is it acceptable overage for us? 10%?
I think, I mean, you're running about 1%.
1%? Are we at
And-
1% or 10?
17, yeah.
Well, but that's that
Oh, right,
nine
yeah.
hundred.
Yes.
If it was 400, it would be 10%, right? 500,000 is 10% of 5 million.
And again, there's just, the budget, and I know that people look upon the budget as, that's it. This is an estimate a year and a half out,
Right.
and,
That's very.
and I've seen so many missteps because, when students come in, you've got to educate them.
Right.
And you say, that won't happen. I've seen it happen. And so I just think you want to protect yourself to be able to make it comfortably.
Yeah.
In a financial way. And I don't think you're out of line now. I personally do not think you're out of line.
I'm just trying to get like points, thinking about, I don't think it's out of line. I'm saying like.
Yeah.
The public is gonna see that and be like, we're doing it.
I'll add some comments in a minute. Liz has tried to say something.
I just wanted to mention, there are two repairs we'll need to make before the end of the
Yes.
year that I am thankful for this.
Yes.
One being the wood chip boiler controls are outdated and obsolete. That's a very expensive repair. And the leak in the kitchen caused malfunction of freezer, so we'll have to replace a large freezer in the kitchen. This is another expensive repair, so I'm grateful that we're in this position.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we can use this budget to fund those instead of doing it to reserve funds.
Yeah, it feels like to me, it's like having a savings account for your. Right, you're putting a little extra in so that when there's something does go wrong.
Yeah.
Let me add to this and then I'll come to you, Charlie, if I may, just because I want to build on what's being discussed. And that is to remember that with our prior surpluses, we have created reserve funds for repairs. We have given money back to the taxpayers, and we're doing that again this year by 150,000. We're reducing the proposed budget we're taking to them. So it's and we're being really transparent about that. So where there are surpluses, we're trying to put it to work. One on Karen speaking of this building, we're doing
Yeah.
better than many buildings in the state. When you hear
Absolutely.
about the lack of infrastructure protection and enhancement over time, we have built in the reserve funds and we're using that money, a new roof and, yeah, exactly. And the solar installation. So we're able to show the voters what we're doing with this, even though we didn't anticipate another surplus of this size, is what I would say. And again, we'll get their thinking at town meeting about it, but we're gonna be really clear and open. Now, Charlie.
Well, just to try and follow up on Margie's point, I'm wondering, how reliable is the figure for encumbrances as a guide to how much more money we've got to spend? So I can see some things get on that encumbrance list and some things don't, and I don't understand why. But do you think we're going to spend about $1.188 million more dollars?
Keeping in mind that most of your encumbrance is employees and their benefits. So you've got salaries and health insurance, and those are locked and loaded in encumbrances. I should say.
But I get that, but is that a reliable indicator of the total remaining things we have to pay for between now and the end of the year?
And typically, it's 72% of your budget, that salaries and benefits area. So
72%.
So in other words, we could say there's maybe another 25% of 1.188, which is going to be other things we have to spend, which has not been
Yes.
encumbered yet.
yes,
So we could do the numbers and find out whether we really do have $500,000 left or not.
and I'll give you just a couple. So we budget, I think it's $20,000 for what they call excess special ed costs.
Mhm.
Now, chances are, we probably won't use it, but it's there in case we do get billed from, some of these school districts that are outside that may bill you back. There's a few other areas that, again, I will say, even the heating oil. Now, we probably left this at $3.50 a gallon, which is what we paid 2 years ago. It was $3.50 a gallon that we paid. And we last year we went down to $2.50. And so great buy. I don't know what's going to happen next year. If they keep chugging up the cargo in that area, we may be in a higher price. So this is an estimate. And again, I hope it's a good estimate in that you're not going to fall into a deficit, that cash flow wise, you're going to be able to provide, sufficient streams of money to make sure that there's no hiccups.
I think our worry is less that we're going to be in a deficit than that we'll have another embarrassing surplus. That's what I think I'm hearing from Rosie.
Well, I can see that if I were just a straight up voter that had never been to a single meeting here, I would be like, why do we keep having these huge budgets of surpluses? Why are there surplus? And then I'd want to hear a concise statement. Okay, we build in a little bit of buffer on a bunch of different categories, and that adds up to this year. It does not always, and we have tightened it down as much as we can, and we want to be safe and not be having cash flow problems.
And Margie, know that there is no buffers that are built in at all. And you're budgeting exactly who you have for staff now at the cost that they're at. And there's no, I didn't put $100,000 in there just in case there's replacements that Liz wanted to make. It's right for the dollar where they are now. And we went up 16% obviously on the health insurance. But the problem is if somebody goes from a single plan, new person, the previous person had a single plan, they're going to a family plan. Family plan now is $32,000.
Yeah.
And so that may not sound like a lot, but you know what? That happens with 3 new staff members. You got $100,000 that you need to find.
And the converse is just the same. You
Right.
might have 3 people who told us they were taking a family plan and they're taking a family and budget for the family plan. And then whatever happened, whatever reason, they choose to either, they don't take insurance because a partner is providing that insurance.
Yeah.
Or they switch to a single plan and all of a sudden you've got $100,000
Yes.
that you weren't, you budgeted that was going to be spent and now you have it back. So, I mean, it's the complexities of school budgets of trying to create a school budget almost 12 months in advance.
Yeah.
Because you are trying to anticipate everything. And I think that's what makes it so difficult to do that. So
I just want to say,
That's what I'm gonna say.
You're in charge of speaking on that one, Marge.
one of our districts has tightened the screws down. And I think after they've gone through that for this next year, I think they're going to have a full appreciation of why
You don't want to do.
you don't want to do that, because no one is comfortable. And I don't say that in a nice way. I mean, no
Yeah.
one, you need to operate efficiently.
Right.
And it takes that cash flow to do it.
I just mentioned something that I thought was said before, which is maybe it was about it being a savings account. I think some idea of, figuring out a use of a vocabulary word that makes sense to people about expenditures like it's a cushion because there are so many changes that happen in the budget. And so, maybe something like that. I think, we have intelligent people at the school, that come to the town meetings and ask really great questions. But I think that idea, in giving examples is helpful, like have come up.
Thank you, Kim. So I thought this was a good opportunity, given the change in our agenda tonight, the fact that the students weren't coming to do a special presentation gave us even more time to have this conversation. And I think it's good preparation for town meeting. We'll come back to that, to the topic of preparation, but this was also useful in that spirit. So if everybody's okay, we'll thank Jim for this report, and I don't think you need to stay for the remainder.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, up to you, but I think we can get through the rest of this with Andy, and thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Jim.
Good night.
And so now it's the principal's report.
Perfect. We dropped in our 30-day attendance rate. We were really riding the high of 95%. But over the past 30 days, it dropped to 93.7.
Okay.
We did have quite a few bouts of strep and flu and COVID and pink eye and all the things. So, but and you can see that in the graph. It's really interesting to be like, oh, that's where strep came through. Okay. And I also want to take the opportunity to give a huge thank you to the Westminster Fire Department. They used the really cold temps to spray our field. Students had been skating during winter sports. We shoveled it off again today so they can come, if the temps drop, they can come and spray it again to really harden it up. So it's a really wonderful tradition for Westminster, and community is always welcome to enjoy the rink on weekends or outside regular school hours. It's always there. Winter sports is rolling right along. We have 3 more sessions. We're fortunate to have beautiful weather, so we're just really soaking that in. This past Monday, all staff engaged in professional development. We were so fortunate that Deb Harding was able to shift everything to remote last minute. It was really great to still engage in the staff choices. So the format this year, staff pick a year-long strand. All of our K2 teachers or K3 teachers are doing lead to read through the Stern Center. Other options are responsive decision-making with the universal number screener, nature-based and place-based learning. And then there's mini sessions that they can take throughout the afternoon. So if you wanted a crash course in the universal number screener, you could take that for a little dipstick of trying it out. So it's been really well received, and a huge thank you to Deb Harding for organizational efforts. We also have been welcoming a handful of BFUHS seniors back alum, Westminster alum, who have chosen to reconnect with Westminster. We are welcoming Ava Ross, who is connected with Janelle and Makerspace at Studio Y as part of her work study project with Heather Warriors High School. And then we have Aaliyah Farmer coming in tomorrow to work with our kindergartners on germs and cleanliness as part of her senior project. So of course, we're just thrilled to welcome past Westminster students back in. Kindergarten, it's not too early to start thinking about kindergarten next year. We'll be sending up our kindergarten roundup right after February break. So we'll mail that out to everyone on our list. We'll post it on our website. We'll share it with our newsletter. We'll put it on our Facebook page, try to get a collection of who we should be expecting for kindergarten. And then, as you know, a couple weeks ago, one of our dampers was left on manual, which caused air. We suspect that when a contracted service was in doing work on our HVAC unit, they accidentally left some on manual, which allowed the airflow to enter the coil, which then caused a leak in the coil, which caused flooding in our gym. And, parents can drop off as early as 7:45. At 7:44, our fire alarm was going off and firemen were here. So a huge thank you to our staff, to the fire department at Westminster, to our students for following the practices that we practice every month. So it was really wonderful to see that. And staff remained calm, students followed directions. It was kind of business as usual as we were trying to contain. Things were cleaned up within a half hour. The water was cleared up, but we are still unable to get the moisture percentage to drop below 18%. It's really staying steady at 18%, and normally wood floors hold a 6% moisture. So Bill and I met with ServPro representative and our Bisbit representative and staff from Hazen Flooring, who built this gym floor originally 19 years ago. The man who actually built it was there. And we just talked about the current damage, what it might look like. Are we replacing the whole floor? Are we replacing just the affected areas? Because the moisture is multiple layers down in the subflooring. They don't make that flooring, that specific flooring anymore. They don't make that subflooring anymore. So Bisbit will let us know what's the most cost-effective way to.
Is that the insurance?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will that be largely covered by insurance?
yep, yeah. We'll pay our
Can I just
deductible
interject
and-
here real quick?
Yeah.
And I just wanna say thank you to Liz for calling
Yeah.
ServPro, because on the surface, if you look at the gym floor, it was fine. And sadly, I think that happens, it has happened in the past all too much throughout the many schools, right? You see a damage and you're like, oh, it's fine, you cleaned it up, you know, you guys were out there half an hour, it was all mopped up, no big deal. You're not thinking about moisture 4 layers down and what that will do, not this year, but in a few years as your floor starts to warp, because gym floor, they warp, you know? And so to get ServPro out here, to get them working on it, it stinks that have damage to the floor and we might end up with a new gym floor. But it's being covered, your deductible is $2,500. So,
Right at the end of the
you know, so I mean, Liz acting fast, I think is just a blessing, because it could have ended up being costing your taxpayers a lot of money.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about when we met with Hazen Flooring and Bisbit, is that if we just replaced what is visibly damaged, my concern is that water, we were testing certain parts of the floor that were damaged, but what if water seeped, you know, on the other side of the gym that we're not testing and we're not, and then in 4 months, it starts warping and then we're replacing. So we had all of those conversations, and I'm looking forward to talking with Joanne from Bisbit to see what our next steps will be. So in the meantime, Waste of Basketball, we're unable to host community events in there, but they did say once ServPro is out, they still have, you know, they still have a big tent for me to do inventory. The book room was affected too, and the OT room is also affected. So I've been doing inventory on the affected materials, but once that is out, we're able to use the gym, just not the affected areas. We cone off a section of the gym, so we could still have our all-school meeting in there, or they could have PE class on half of the gym. Right now, they're going outside, and weather has been great, and Miss G has been super flexible and taking the kids out cross-country skiing, taking them out ice skating. So that's good. Any other questions?
Yep, any other questions?
I saw that email and I was like, oh, God.
Oh,
no.
I know.
All the things.
I know.
This has been a great year for all of our principals to get a crash course in facilities management.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We had the winter concert just the night before, so
I
I was just so grateful. Could you imagine the gym full of the community? And then it's just thinking, because Bill was in there cleaning up the chairs. And then I'm like, is there a leak? I hear water. And then it's just pouring, yeah. So,
I will say the winter concert was really.
yeah,
It was.
yeah. So it was
Fantastic.
awesome.
It was fantastic.
That was really,
In addition to the content, I really want to congratulate you on the process. Just the efficiency of moving from one to one to one to one to one. Very, very sharp. It just enhanced the whole experience.
Could I offer an idea? I thought to myself, if there had been a donation jar somewhere, just, you know, nobody had to give anything, but I thought as I came in, I would have donated something, and or on my way out, I might have. So it's just an idea, you know, something. It could be in the form of I don't know, a singing boy. You know, it doesn't have to be just like something, you know, mundane, but some kind of a thing. That's anyway, my idea, maybe going.
Okay.
All right, well, moving ahead, how about new business, the donation of student activities account, if you can help us with that?
Yep, so there's a local nonprofit organization, Together We Can. They donated $3,000 to the Westminster Center School. These funds we're planning on using to purchase self-care items and a pantry for students to access through the day. They'd be accessible for students during the day or to take home to use at home or to support food insecurity.
What does that mean, self-care?
Like deodorant,
Okay.
toothpaste,
Okay.
to the.
So do you need a motion from the board to accept this $3,000 donation from Together We Can?
We don't need a motion necessarily. I mean, maybe, your acknowledgement and thankfulness is really all that's needed. But we like to break things that are large amounts. You are aware of those things.
I think it'd be nice to show it in the minutes that the Westminster board gratefully acknowledges the generous donation from Together We Can. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
I agree, that'd be great.
So next item under old business is capital improvements, and I think, you and Bill McKenna have been meeting a lot on various things
Yeah.
recently. Do you have just a quick summary of where we are with?
Well, I'm meeting with, Bill and I are meeting with Steve Horton tomorrow.
Okay, good.
To run through and get the big updates. I know the front entryway should be happening within a month. Yeah, I don't know.
Market, didn't start on March.
Okay, the front entryway, that will include the K1 hallway bathrooms. Great, so that's exciting. Let's see,
Oh, I didn't realize it included that.
well,
It's gonna
yeah.
smell so much better.
Heard it.
Yeah, so he said we could put that in. We're gonna add with the entry. Right now, Bridget can buzz open the door, like from her desk, she can buzz open the front door and the door at Studio Wide. But we're hoping that we can add an additional buzzer for this entry, so, because we can have a camera so we can see who's there, and the entry to the recess door. So we're hoping to add those two things. We would like to move forward with the wood chip boiler upgrades. This is the replacing some technology that's part of the wood chip boiler. And we are still in conversation about the parking lot. We met with the engineering firm. They had some ideas, which they shared with our team, and I will check in with Steve tomorrow about the update on that. Also, Bill has looked into replacing the LED, like replacing the lights to LED lights, something that we're thinking about. And then getting some pricing on that, see what that would be like. And thinking about what this hallway might look like if it were a hallway. Because right now classes are transitioning through classrooms. It's pretty disruptive. So what might that look like? What might that cost? Just kind of pricing out some things, just to the project would be. The kitchen freezer is definitely something we'll need to replace.
Would that be under insurance or not?
The freezer,
Because it was because of the water damage?
no, it was damaged before this recent
Okay.
one. It wasn't. It would.
Wasn't part of that.
I think it was one of those where we didn't call Servpro.
Well, it's also one of those that, again, I don't think this is your fault. There's that idea that like, what's it's small leak, we don't have to kind of get
Yeah.
into it. And you think of your own homeowners, right? Like if you make a claim, you make too many claims, you're gonna get canceled. We're not getting canceled. And so, maybe folks were able to kind of patch it and they thought it would be okay. And then it keeps coming and going, and we've had enough, unfortunately, enough conversations with Visbit at this point. Visbit's like, no, we want you to make, every time that you make a claim, and then the determination is made. You may have to pick it up if it's under 25. You have to make that decision. It's $2,600. You want to make a claim,
Right.
or just, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So those are all the things that we can do.
What about the gym roof?
I don't have pricing on that. I'm hoping that I have an update on that.
The gym roof, we have a contract.
We have a con,
Yeah, so put that on your.
Thank you.
Just get an update from Steve
Yes,
tomorrow.
yes,
It's really a
we
matter
do.
of scheduling it. We have a signed. contract.
Right, no, thank you for that. I didn't have that in my notes in front of me. Yeah, so I'll get an update on the
I think it's a
planning.
matter of whether, you know. but-
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, they're starting in the spring. Like once they start
Yeah,
roofing
But
again.
once again, we
Yes.
know that the solar project is contingent on that being
Mhm.
done.
Yeah.
It can't
Yes.
start. Yeah, thank you.
As far as that, we just bumped into Margie the other day and somewhere we said, I said, let's go and I'd like to meet with the solar folks.
Mhm.
And just look at their plan in detail and look at orientations, look at angles, just say, what's optimal? Is it really gonna cost us an arm and a leg to get the ideal? You know, just to play with those angles one more time before they start actually building the thing.
Well, he was
Just
supposed to,
because they've said, they've been rather sort of loose with it. Well, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't point south, and it doesn't really matter if it's a low angle. No, not much, I'm a little worried about that, those statements, so I'd love to just to tell me. Well, let's suppose we did point them south, is that gonna mess up your plan for putting them around the parking lot? What would it really cost to angle them at 35 degrees instead of whatever?
we don't have, but we don't have that.
Well, I don't know what that's what I want to sit with them and say, show us an actual plan. If they're not pointing south, why not, can't we point them south and would it make a difference and how much would it cost?
I don't think they're going to do that until they get closer to being able to start, especially because of the changes in pricing of materials. And we don't have a revised comprehensive plan.
We asked them to do, remember at our last meeting with them, we asked them to like give a price out a few things for us and then we looked at it. That was where what we left it the last time that you and Liz and I met with Andrew, right?
Yeah, I'm sort of worried about, it. We put it off, and then they're ready to go and we haven't had a conversation.
They won't start
Oh, now-
without with us in
No,
detail.
it's ready to go.
Okay, then I would just like to bookmark, that there should be such a conversation.
We should have another. Andrew said he would have it he said probably by January.
Okay, then follow up.
So we'll follow up with,
All right.
February.
Karen, you had some question?
No, I was just saying that, both asking Steve a bit about this, but also we know that we're going to be talking with Andrew and that crowd later on, so.
Great. So it does sound like, based on what he said, it's great to follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All righty, and then now to planning for town meeting, we got a head start on that. We should have an informational meeting for the voters like we did last year. Last year, we had it on a Saturday right around vacation, spring break or whatever that break is called, and got a complaint, at least one complaint about that. I'm wondering if we had a special meeting on February 15 at our regular time, a 6 o'clock board meeting, and just advertise it as a open to the community, come and talk about the budget.
That would be great.
That would be good. I am worried about this.
Okay.
Because people are really aware because of a lot of the press lately about the increase in taxes. People are super aware, like, of the proposed increase. They're talking about that state increase, what you sent us.
Right.
And they're worried about their tax bills and they're really thinking a lot about this. Every client that walks in my room is like asking me about it. And I'm like, we're gonna do our budget, but.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that we're gonna have, scrutiny, I guess.
Well, apropos of that, I was maybe a little nervous that in one of the warrants, it said, or one of the articles, it said, we're gonna give a certain amount of money back to the voters, and we're gonna keep another amount of money for, amongst other things, security of the building and energy efficiency. But we already put aside money for that last year, and I'm worried somebody's gonna say, wait a minute, you guys put a huge amount of money for those very things last year.
Yeah.
And you're saying you're gonna put aside the same things this year. So I would love to get that language out of that, if possible.
Oh, it's-
You've already got your articles and your warning already out there,
Yeah, it's
Well,
more.
good.
but it is typical for boards to create capital reserve accounts and then with surpluses to replenish or to, continue to add to those specific accounts. I mean,
Right.
you know, security upgrades, sure, you can spend some money now and do some security upgrades, but that isn't the end all of all the security upgrades that need to happen in this building. There's a lot. Your solar panels, while you put money aside and you're talking with a vendor and a company, you got it, you know, you're working on that whole thing. Those costs could come back and change. And then the other thing is,
It's still the,
in the future, you could go back to your taxpayers at some point and say, this solar project's done, we can have an article and we want to move, do something else with the dollars, and then we'll ask them for that permission.
I thought part of it too was like energy efficiencies, like in terms of heat pumps and stuff like that.
Right. And we also have the 30-year plan, that projection
Yeah.
that you got for us from the analysis that shows us some big costs out in the future. I guess I'm not as worried about that, but that leads to, we need to draft a frequently asked questions document like we did
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
So in the stages here, I'm happy to draft one. I think we could do a quick brainstorming here of the topics we think should be in it. And then I think we should have that document ready for February, if we're doing it on the 15th. It looked like you guys seemed to think that was a good idea. We may revise it for a town meeting, which is March 2nd. It's the Saturday. You know, we might learn some things and get some additional questions. I'm not super confident that a lot of people will come, but if we promote it and just say, this is our special meeting, and with a Zoom option, we'll get a lot more people than we will coming in person here. Yeah.
What was that one number that Dan Axel always wants to see? We asked for it last year. We didn't have it in our. Like,
Oh.
I'm not sure. Think about that. Yeah.
it was like a specific number. I mean, I don't think it was per pupil cost. It wasn't like budget, but like cost per pupil. Do you remember?
Are you saying, you're talking about Dan Axel? Is that who you're talking about or someone else?
Specific number that he really wanted to see like front and center on our paper?
Yeah, there were a number, as I recall.
I think it was cost per pupil, I think.
Was it cost
I
per
think so,
pupil?
yeah.
Might have been, yeah.
So,
Okay, so that's maybe one. that we need to have ready.
but there is a fairly reasonable explanation for the rise in cost per pupil related to the reduction in enrollment.
Right.
But it's heavily dependent on that. Yeah, the cost don't vary that much for the 10 more students, but the ratio does.
So, Cheryl, could I ask, this is, the 15th is a special meeting for us to do this, correct? Is that what you're,
That's what I'm suggesting. It would, you
Yes.
know. That would be, that's the date for our optional meeting each month. And so that's what I would suggest, rather than doing it on a Saturday like we did last time. And the 15th is a week before the spring break, so we're not interfering with that. So let's take these one at a time. Is that date good? Are you, okay? So special meeting, and we'll do some, you can put it in the newsletter.
Yeah.
We'll work on some language for promoting it to people even more broadly than we normally would. Had I thought about this sooner, we could have put it in the Gazette that just came out today.
Yeah.
We'll have to promote it differently, but you can help a lot. Yeah.
and do we have a time that you're considering?
Would just say the regular time of our regular school board meeting, but it's a special school board
Okay.
meeting, a community forum to discuss the budget.
So.
Yeah.
Article, can we go into the article?
Sure.
Okay, so in Article 3, it talks about the creating like more of a surplus to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2026. Is there a way that we could give examples of ways we've done that with the current reserve fund so that, sure, so we can say, for example, these are some things that we've already done that would have gone back to the taxpayer and we not have the reserve. Yes. I'm not reading off them off the internet. No, it was in the, it was in the email. It was in an email.
Okay.
You didn't look on with me.
So we're talking about things that would go into the FAQ. You know, we have talked about the students coming. I'd suggest they come to a regular meeting, that we let this be just budget, just community. Like that.
That would be a real lesson in public.
Yeah.
Sit in.
Wow,
Yeah.
Right. So to get ready for that, then I'll go be thinking about things, questions and answers you think should be in it. I'll send back to you what we wrote last year.
Quick question. In Article 3, it says we will, 265 grand roughly, to create a reserve fund to offset expenses. How does that number, 265,000, compare to the previous times we put money into a reserve fund? Is it higher or lower?
Let lower.
So it was like in the 400s or something.
Well, we had a lot of them. We had 770,000 for the from two surplus funds for our energy efficiency and security. And that we had maybe 140,000 in total for nature-based learning. Which we're not speaking to enhancing right now, that they're doing really well with that. Yeah.
So it's-
I'll pull all that out for you, so we have this reference,
Thank you.
but that's definitely low.
do we want to invite somebody specific like the major? Just to that informational, the February 15th thing, just to have somebody who's knowledgeable about previous.
That's a great idea, and he's the town moderator.
Yeah.
Right. How about inviting the select board? How about the select board?
Yeah,
Invite the select
yeah,
board.
select board, something like that, so that we.
Yeah.
We're-
Good, let's extend special invitations to people, that would be great.
I mean,
And
I'm
then
happy to do anything.
We might, with 2 weeks notice like this, we might have Harley provide refreshments, coffee and something. Not that I expect people to come in person, but it would be nice to have a little bit of that.
Do you want me to reach out to them?
So right, and that could go in our the board expense line and the budget.
Okay.
And we just line for it. The other thing is that we did print last year and we'll need that again, so maybe you want to do a requisition or something to Staples.
Okay.
It was a few $100s to print the FAQs to hand out at town meeting.
So we'll have, is it the idea having it in the lunchroom as we did before?
I said, can we? Sure. And we'll have to have the Zoom access, like we.
Yeah, I just felt like there was more space for people to,
Are you?
yeah, move around. And because the gym is going through whatever the gym is going through.
We'll bring her up to speed.
Mhm.
It'll be fun.
Can I ask one other thing? I know this is kind of, but there's, last year we had that one sheet of paper that is full of numbers, it like comes from the state, it's an amount, it's always like in our paperwork, but it's, I feel like it's always the first time I've seen it.
Yes, a yellow highlight on it.
Yes, it had a yellow highlight, like had certain numbers, and that's the one that like.
That's how they calculate.
But they're not using that format anymore.
Yeah, they're not, okay.
And there is a one pager in our budget and it's in the town meeting book. And I can send you that, but it's not the same format that it was.
It's a different format, okay. I would love to take a peek at that before we have this February 15th thing.
So I think that covers
So
it.
I think there should be a Q&A on the real budget. So if the voters approve the $100,000 reduction, the actual budget will be whatever, and that is a such and such percentage increase. If they don't, then it'll be whatever it is then.
The proposed budget for 25 is already being reduced by 150,000 because the voters approved it at last town
And
meeting.
that's included in the 5,366,000.
It's has not been reduced, no.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's to say that this budget will actually be reduced by 150,000.
That is correct.
So, therefore the real increase will be whatever it is.
It's still close to 4%.
Yeah, it shows up on your tax sheet when it's all done. I mean, you can't put it into your operating budget because Your operating budget is your operating.
Yeah, but then let's take credit for what we've already done.
Right.
We have in fact, you go this and say, and that's what will happen in the future.
So this would be a chance for us to have a conversation about ourselves on the 15th, and we'll be even more ready to go on March 2nd. in front of voters and
I
residents.
just want to point out that on our, if you go to the SU website, the annual report and all the budget preview stuff is right
It's up
there
today.
It's up.
Yeah, I saw it too. Yeah,
So if anyone's looking for it, okay.
that's great.
That's a big shout out to Kate O'Connor and Nicole.
And Nicole, thank you.
Will we be allowed to talk about it in the special meeting? Or, because we'll have the public there, which we, sure, we can talk amongst ourselves in front of the public, but we can't talk about it when they're not there, can we?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Will we be allowed to talk about these Q&As and the preparation for the town meeting at that February 15th meeting? Is that warned as such that the school board will talk amongst themselves about this meeting and will talk to the public as well?
I think it would say something like preparation for town meeting and budget discussion, and we can talk about it.
So I'm just wondering, so we will have this conversation amongst ourselves, even though the public is standing there listening. Is that right? Sitting there listening.
If it felt relevant, I don't know why not. I'm not understanding exactly your question.
Well, I'm wondering, I don't know, of course, the public is listening out there, but
Right now, yeah, it's all being
the format
recorded.
tends not to be us talking to each other at these public meetings.
Right,
So if I'm still nervous about something, or I still want to say, Cheryl, why don't you say this, that, or whatever, we can have those conversations right there in that meeting.
sure. I mean, we're,
I'm just thinking David Clark's there and we're listening in on this, they'll be chiming in, they'll be doing whatever. So it might be less easy to have a candid conversation amongst ourselves about what we will, how we present at the meeting.
we need to, we have to, this is open meeting law, and if we have all of us in a meeting, anything we say, it should be said. I mean, anything we're concerned about should be said. Yeah. And you were gonna say something?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm listening. That sounds great.
Forthright public discussion is a hallmark of Vermont.
Yeah.
Disagreeing respectfully in public is one of the things that I cherish about Vermont and never take for granted, and we still have to work on it. Yeah,
I think that, is one of the biggest pieces that also came up today in our discussion with superintendents and with the legislature is the challenge of a state-wide funding mechanism and the tradition of local control. Those two do not work together, and that's why all of these, that's why this is so messy. And just as you say that, I mean, that tradition is so powerful, and then you're trying to do an equalization of spending, the two don't work together.
Well, they don't want to.
I'd be curious to find a state that, I don't think any other state does it, but they have the equalized spending, but they don't have that local piece of it, so the local piece is almost counterintuitive to the equalization of spending. When you get into the big piece of what it's trying to do, because you as a local board cherish things and want to provide for your students. But if you're taking your money and sending it to Springfield, because when the equalization happens, that's what happens, is that some of your tax dollars are actually not coming all the way back to you all the time. That's what happens in equalization.
that does raise some.
Very broad
Right.
piece of it, so I just want to,
That raises another question though, that's relevant, and it's related to something you said earlier about the meeting that you had today. It has to do with the reports we've gotten of some school districts approving budgets that were over the 5%. And doing that with some intention, and now what's being discussed is a way to have all of us who kept under the 5% pay for the extra that had been budgeted. And so that's a fairness question for me. And we'll have to see to what extent that actually goes through the legislature. That's an example for me of our reaching out to our local legislators about it. It'll be fascinating to watch. I mean, honestly, if the folks who thought it made sense to spend more than 10% in excess of their current budgets thought that was fair, and then it turns out that everybody has to pay for that.
And they are talking about the potential of if districts want to, that part of this legislation would give them the opportunity to go back, re-budget, re-warn, move their voting date so that they could adjust based on the fact that they thought that they would be able to do this, now they can't, so they're gonna go back, which would be real fun.
And the potential 16 to 20% increase in property taxes is based on not being clear about the impact of all of this throughout the state. Is that correct? It's because people are talking about increased budgets and we don't know, one, how high they're gonna be, but that's, the state is now saying it looks like it would be that high and that we'll have to spread out around the state.
Can I just make one clarification? It's 16 to 20% of the education portion of our property taxes, right? Or your property
I
tax.
that's the one, I wouldn't want to comment on that.
Well, in that.
I just don't have that working knowledge in front of in
In
my
the
head.
article, that's in several of the articles I read, that's what I understood it to be, because a 16 to 20% increase overall would be a huge increase. It's the education portion of the tax.
That makes sense.
I'm not disputing that, that
Thank
sounds
you.
right, but I
Yeah,
just.
I just was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's, and so we think about the letter from the tax commissioner.
Right.
And he's talking about the Homestead Act, part of it, the tax rate for education. And that is what that would be. But, you know, forgive me if I'm misspeaking, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's what I've said, like in my office, when people come in, I've been out of shape about this, I'm like, just remember, this is not your, it's not your whole tax bill going up by 20%, it's education portion of that going up. And I don't know what the portion is, but like, I'm not sure what that portion is, but I know that it's not the entirety, that you have to pay for garbage, you gotta pay for roads. You know,
That makes sense because the property tax bill also has fire and it has the tennis and then it has school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's great. But all of this, big issues, many uncertainties, and that's part of what we'll share with the public. And that goes back to what Jim Bazini was saying.
Yeah,
And this is what we think it costs to serve our kids.
yes.
This is the budget we're proposing and it's an approximately 4% increase of this per year. And they can still ask, well, why? And we can go into all the reasons. For that.
I liked
You
it.
said you would. Yeah, okay.
I liked it last year when you put in the like 16%, making it clear 16% increase in healthcare that is out of our control. Those, I liked it when you put in those ones that are like kind of out of our control. I like when Jim says, we're talking about quality here, because that really,
Right.
I think that is. We're not talking about just running a loose ship that's just whatever. It's like it's quality education. We need to like all be on the same, we need to be like saying that this is quality education. This is how much it costs to do that.
And with a lot of intensifying needs for a great many of our students.
Right.
All right, with that, let's do the director's comments. And our next meeting will be a special meeting on the 15th at 6 o'clock here at the school. Margie.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna do what Andrew always tells me, it's a compliment sandwich. Everybody is doing great things here. Junie is loving the winter sports. It's an awesome thing. You're like, oh, because you're having so much fun at school. We hate the closures. We hate the school days, like late, yeah, you got to.
The rain day.
You got to knock on Andrew's window.
And then no.
Yeah, because like, when we have multiple kids that go to different schools, so then Andrew's dropping off one kid, he's left the house before we're getting the information that school is closed, in fact, and so it's just, I know you guys are doing the best you can, and it's super, super disruptive to people's work lives, and these kids are getting in the car anyway. They have to get in the car to go to grandma's or whatever. So like, if the buses can't go, I mean, I'm just gonna say this one time. In Alaska, where I grew up, in the entirety of my 12 years, we had 2 snow days, 2. And the buses, like, we made this choice as a district, and I don't know if we can do this in our district or not, but like, if the buses couldn't run, we would just say the buses can't run. And they would call and say, the buses aren't running. School's on, you bring your kids in. And that was the way that it like was. I can just tell you that that is going to come up. People are pissed about some school closures. It's very disruptive.
They now tell us what you really.
Yeah, right.
I know that, Travis.
And the end of the sandwich is, I should have thought more about that. To end the sandwich.
I see.
But I'm stoked about the entryway. That's gonna be awesome. Things are happening. Yeah, that's a really cool thing. Sorry you have to take black about all that. But it is true. People are getting irritated. And I love the school. I can't wait for this meeting.
Right. These are director's comments, Charlie.
Great to be back in the USSSA. Anyway, glad to be here in person, with you all, good meeting, I don't have any complaints at all, I'm afraid, I look, and we had some school, I get to sleep in.
I know, but like, that's the thing.
No, I'm kidding, I feel good. And little real. I have a little, as I always seem to do, habit of anticipating the challenges from the public when we meet in public and trying to anticipate what they're going to be and how we're going to respond to it. So that's part of what prompted me to speak earlier, and I think it's just good planning to know if the most, I don't call them the most annoying person, but if the most whatever. Dissatisfied person shows up and just says, well, holy schmoly, it's just too much. What then? I think my personal view is to say, well, okay, you can vote against quality, I'm voting for it. Everybody wants to join us, but we do have to show this quality. If we challenge, like reading skills or whatever it is. So since the budget's all going up in next year, and they always will, there you go. That's it.
I don't have much comments. There have been a lot of couple silly, almost sort of thing on the days off, but I think, it's a hard call to make. I know safety is important. I do wonder about like, if a lot of the reasons is because of like back roads in Athens, Grafton, we have closed. There's been schools that have closed one school and not the entire district. So if that's the case, instead of, yeah, for the 7 kids who live on those roads. I appreciate so much. I just want to say again, I love the winter concert. I thought it was so well put together. I got the opportunity to join winter sports the other day, and I was with just the most wonderful group of kids, and it was so fun, and they were so happy, and they didn't even want to eat lunch. They didn't want to take a break. They just were snowboarding, and it was their first time ever being, like that year was their first time ever being on a mountain, and it's just such a great opportunity. And I know it's a ton of work for schools, like so much work. So I appreciate it because it means a lot to the kids, and it's I mean, these kids live in Vermont. Sometimes it's the only way they're ever going to get to the mountain. So it's awesome. So thank you for doing all that work. A lot of it.
Yeah.
Karen, anything from you, the director's comments?
Yes, I just appreciated so much everybody's passion. You know, the passion comes from really caring about the school and caring about the students, everything from Jim's work to Andy to all of the rest of you. And just the passion and Liz, I think that you've done an extraordinary job of handling the things that you've had to handle. And I just am appreciative and thank you all. And I look forward to our putting it all together and talking to the public.
Fantastic, thank you. I don't have anything more to add, except that I appreciate each of you and Andy and Liz and Nicole. Thank you very much. And that's it. We are adjourned at 7:40 p.m.
Yeah, Liz, you really did this very well.
Well, I also want to, I'm not the sole person who puts on winter sports. Man.
Oh, I know.
Does a lot, the lion's
I know.
share, so I'm uncomfortable taking like, oh, it's so much work. Well,
No.
yes, but for many.
I
people-
meant for everyone, it's not a work, but also just with all the stuff
I
happening.
know.